Hey, good morning. Welcome for my breakfast. I have bread, avocado, and some enriched uji. And I want to invite you to some snippets of maximizing opportunity for wealth creation. Do you like that subject? I don't know. Some people don't. But I wish you were part of those who would love to make wealth, those who would want to maximize their resources in a good way. Um, I want to talk about something small that I'm sure you will like. There is this book that is in the Second Kings, Second Kings chapter 4, verse 1. Now, right there, there is a story of a prophet's widow. In today we would be talking about a shepherdess. You understand what I'm talking about? A shepherdess, a widowed shepherdess. Now, this tells us something, that actually life has seasons of plenty of scarcity, and therefore we want to see this widow in crisis. You see, but what is interesting to me, the reason why I'm doing this series is how possible, how possible you think could a man of God be in a crisis like this one? Not the man of God himself. He's long departed, he's dead. But you see, he had a family. He had two sons. He had a wife. But see, something really strange happened. This man of God, a faithful servant by the admission of the wife himself, has died, and he has left behind a huge debt. As a matter of fact, the 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 creditors are by the door, and they are not laughing at her because, as I told you, the husband has had left a huge debt. So the creditors are coming to recover what is what belongs to them, as it is always is. As a matter of fact, in my culture, what normally happens is when somebody has died and before they are buried, uh, a question is always asked: did this man have a debt? Does anyone owe him? And if there is, you better say it before the man is buried, because after burial, you don't come asking for anything from anyone from that family, because they give you space to speak about it. And therefore, like in this case, creditors are showing up at the door, threatening to enslave her two sons. And by the way, this was very legal. It was acceptable that if someone was not responsible enough in their lifetime to pay off their debts. I mean, there were consequences, and some of which were that his or her family members would actually be taken for slavery in a period of almost 7 years, depending on how much the debt was. And in the year of Jubilee, they would be released and they could go home to their people. But not before that. They would have to pay their debt to the last bit of the coin. And therefore, I look at this. This is a man of God. And it pains me a little bit. Sometimes we are Christians, fathers, husbands, family people, Christians, can actually be in a situation where we then can leave a huge burden behind when we are long gone and dead. What a paradox. This cannot be. This is a prophet's home. We presume they should know better, isn't it? Sometimes it's not the case, as you see. This man had ministered in the name of God, but he sinks into a financial ruin. What do you think about that? I want to leave you to absorb that as I bite. This story, by the way, is not a tale of grief, death, pain in that case. No. It's not limited to that. It depicts what happens even today in our own lives. Today. Now. It shows us what happens when spiritual men and women neglect economic wisdom. How do we seize opportunities even in the darkest crisis, therefore? Because sometimes we get into very serious crisis. How do we seize those opportunities and not let it to tear us down into a colossal crisis? How can we salvage ourselves? How can we redeem ourselves from situations that would cripple us completely? How can we do that? Think about it. How do we as people of God ensure our families and mission are never crippled by financial illiteracy? So it is about illiteracy, huh? Meaning that we can actually get out of it, out of crisis that can happen to our families when we die abruptly for some reason. You see, death comes in different ways, doesn't it? But it is more about this aspect of literacy or illiteracy on financial matters. Brothers and sisters, this is a serious thing. And it is exactly what is being brought out in this verse. Verse number 1. Remember, it says, now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophet unto Elisha, saying, thy servant, my husband, is dead, and thou knowest not that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. Let's first begin with that first statement that is said there, that actually, thy servant, my husband, is dead. That's the message. Full of information there. Thy servant, my husband, is dead. Sounds like an indictment, doesn't it? It says, thy servant is talking to Elijah, the prophet of God, the master prophet. If it would have been in our situation, it would be the president of the conference, or the union, or the general conference for that matter. And that lady comes and says, Mr. President, thy servant, my husband is dead. You see, here we see the death of a breadwinner. Exposing the fragility of families. Families without financial foundation. This prophet, as I said, feared the Lord. Yet his family lacked economic resilience when he is dead. They cannot put the food on the table. They are risking the only asset of 2 sons. You have no idea what that meant for a Jew. 2 sons. See, every Jew born a boy or son, thank God that they were born boys. So it was a privilege. It was an asset to be born a boy. But all that is about to go to drain because of the carelessness of one man of God. Spirituality without stewardship leaves households vulnerable. That's a statement there. We can be spiritual all we want. That's a good thing. But if we are not inclined to educate ourselves on issues, matters, finance, there's a time when it catches up with us somehow. And it hits us hard, and it doesn't matter who we are. Sometimes it is very embarrassing. Sometimes it's shameful. And we are uncomfortable. We don't want to talk about it. When as a man of God, talking on behalf of God, finds yourself in a situation that is, everybody looks at it and says, oh, dear Heavenly Father, help us in this situation. Faith must be holistic, therefore. As in Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, not even his own children. A good man, a very good man, leaves inheritance to his children's children. Wow. I read those verses and I'm like, am I gonna be the one who will leave inheritance to my children's children? And how much would that one be? How much would go for them to share? And then there is another statement there, if you are keen to check in your Bible. Just read with me. There's a place where it says, the creditor is come. The creditors are by the doorstep. They are waiting. They are just right there. This reminds me something that I have learned over time. That actually death is a cruel master. And managed borrowing enslaves future generations. My best author pens this very powerful statement. She says, shun the incurring of debt as you would shun smallpox. In those days, in the times of Gund, my best author, it was smallpox was a disease like HIV or cancer or it was deadly. It was deadly. It was deadly to have smallpox, that they didn't have medication then. And so she says, shun the incurring of death as you would shun smallpox. If our spending exceeds our earnings, our creditors will always come knocking, whether banks, Shylocks, or unpaid bills. What about that? But I must remind you, we must categorize debt, because even in this story, if you were to stick a little longer, you will see the man of God asking this lady to go to the neighbors and borrow empty jars. And we will deliberate on why the empty jars. It says nobody was coming to ask for them again. It's like it was going to be a donation, sort of. But she borrowed. So borrowing is not a problem. But there is what we call good debt and bad debt. You must differentiate. If you don't differentiate those two, you might get stuck again in life for not appreciating how money works. Because there's money lying in the banks. This money lying in places that if you would be intelligent enough, you can go there, borrow, and use it wisely to grow wealth. Yes, so we might want to have another time to just deal with debt, because there is good debt and bad debt. But almost immediately I can tell you, and a good example of bad debt is like, you're just starting off in life and you think buying a car to let your friends know that umeomoka. In Kenya, we say kuomoka. Kuomoka means you're now, coming out of the woods. Just gotten a good job. But the first thing you think about buying is a car. That's a curse, my friend. In disguise. Well, you will look like you're doing well. But you see, you're stifling the little resources that you've just started having. Remember yesterday, before you got a job, you actually did not have a car. But what wisdom is that? That almost immediately the car becomes important. And we can talk beautifully and nicely about it to convince ourselves that it is actually a good thing to have a car. First, it is not an asset. Again, we have to differentiate what assets are. These things are going deeper and deeper. It needs a lot of time to break some of these things out, isn't it? Your car, my friend, let me whisper to you, it's not an asset. What is an asset again? An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So which one is it you want to pursue? Something that takes money out of your pocket, or something that puts money in your pocket? Those are some of the things that you need to analyze. Those are some of the literacies we are talking about when we are talking about money. Don't you look at me with merciful eyes now. Now, another thing that may not necessarily be an asset is your personal house in the village. How can that be an asset again? Some people say, oh, I have to build a real nice house. Real beautiful house in the village. Well, I wouldn't have any problem if you built it in some urban market. Yeah, you could rent it out, and it gives you money, and probably move into a small apartment if it is giving more money. And then you do another one, and then you do another one. That's how you can make money with real estate. But your personal house in the village, you are in town, probably you're staying in Nairobi, and you build it in your rural home. Let's say some village in Honeyland. I call it Chepkumia. That's my village. You build it there. How is that gonna help you again? Except for giving you status. And that status even gives you more problems, because people now think you have money. And everybody would want a piece of that cake you already have. You see, it doesn't help, especially when you're starting off. I don't mind when you have enough resources and surpluses. You can do that. But I'm talking about when you're starting off. How can building a house first a priority? I don't see that. And therefore, it is if you get into bad debts, you get a loan to build a house, and you take a loan to the maximum 7 years, 10 years. You'll be earning meager salary for 10 years, for 7 years, because you actually put it to the maximum. The rest of the time you're suffering. It's not an income generating project. And that is why I see that as a problem. Now, there's another statement in that verse, again, that says, to take my 2 sons to be bondmen. Now, poor financial planning not only affects us, but enslaves our children's future. We will fail to give our children a jump start in life. So we will continue propagating poverty, because your parents were probably poor, your parents' parents, and then your parents, and then yourself, and then you're propagating the same thing when you are utilizing bad debt. Today, families are enslaved not by physical bondage, but by cycles of poverty, lack of education, and missed opportunities because of lack of planning, lack of not being able to use the available resources, and things like that. And therefore, we must build wealth, not for luxury though, but for mission, for legacy, and for protecting future generation. And for you to live well also, you need to have some bit of money, don't you think? If you think having money is a problem, you already know that poverty hasn't done you any favor. And getting out of your situation is a good thing. It's a good thing. It's something to try, not to try. It's something to do. Don't look at wealth from a distance. Say, hey, that belongs to so and so. Money belongs to this family or that family, and not giving a space for you to think that you could actually be the next millionaire. Okay? So we probably need to think a little more than we are currently doing. May the good Lord bless you as you think about a wealth creation and maximizing opportunity as you create wealth. Now, we need to also go into looking at issues spiritual. That it is possible that actually spiritual leaders can be financially illiterate. Yeah, be careful who talks to you about money, because